Hi, thanks for joining us on the Odgers Berndtson One Question series. I'm Jules McKean. I run the media global practice out of London for Odgers Berndtson Executive Search. I couldn't be more delighted to be joined today by the fabulous Ian Millner. Thanks for joining us, Ian.
Thank you for having me.
For those of you who don't know Ian, and I suspect a lot of you will do, Ian co-founded the legendary marketing agency Iris, aged 28 back in 1999, scaling it to over 1,000 people in 14 countries. They sold Chael about 8 or 9 years ago. Sold to Chael about 8 or 9 years ago. And Ian is executive chair now of that business and an NED and an investor. Importantly, we get Ian on a moment where he has just returned from quite an epic journey at sea, and that is in a literal rather than a metaphorical sense, where he's been undertaking an unforgettable journey, rowing with a group of friends from Ibiza to Barcelona in order to support the cancer charity No Man campaign. So if you haven't already donated, please do. And I will just obviously have to make some sort of gag about the fact that the peaks and the troughs and the incoming tides that you must have faced during that journey will be much the same as they would have been building a business of such scale as Iris over the last 20 years. So thank you for joining us, Ian. And I'm gonna put the question really broadly to you. In the backdrop, this season, this year, it's a funny old summer of oncoming clouds, economic clouds on the horizon, the 14th interest rate rise in a row, etc., etc. Can you give us some reasons to be cheerful?
Well, I don't know. I think that it is definitely gloomy, isn't it? And but I think that if you just think about the UK only for a second, there's also loads of really brilliant and exciting things going on. And I've always had this view that the future is always there. It's always kind of waiting for people to explore it, but you've kind of got to kind of go and do it. It won't necessarily come to you. And I've always had a sense that in life you make your own luck, and being positive and proactive, if you haven't got any other ideas, they're good things. But it does sound a little bit like Rishi Sunak telling you to phone your bank if you're worried about your mortgage, though, doesn't it? And I think if you look at the industry now, there's no doubt that there are loads of big questions about the direction. What does AI mean? In-housing, the massive questions. Charging. I think it's easy to get so kind of bogged down in the big questions that you miss what's right in front of your face. And
that's interesting.
There are some brilliant, exciting opportunities, just cropping up everywhere. I mean, firstly, the creator economy. So what an amazing thing. And I'm 53. Who'd have thought it? I'm 53, and I'm telling everyone.
Let me just put that out there.
No, it's true. It's true. So I'm talking to everyone about the creative economy, and these are all people that are kind of like mid-late 30s or whatever, and they're like looking at me blank, going, "What the hell are you talking about? What is?" And I'm talking about KSI and crime and all these things, and it's still for a lot of people in our industry, it's just not registered what it means. People are talking about AI. Meanwhile, the creative economy is just there staring at them in the face. And what it really means is agencies need to sort of think differently about how they make their work, who they make their work with, being much more open-minded around collaboration, and also having more of a better idea around the batting order around sort of owned and paid for media, because when you're sort of sat at home, watching some sort of entertainment on the telly, quite often it isn't the telly you're watching, it's something else, or you're snacking on something on your phone on the way into work. So for ages, that has been changing, and thus you know, the influence that is being sent to us by marketeers, you know, has also been shifting as well. And the creator economy is so exciting, and it's so easy to participate in. You don't need some sort of algorithm or some technology. It's just an attitudinal shift in terms of how you think about doing our work and who you do it with. So I think creator economy, I mean, massive, exciting and positive, you know, reason to be cheerful as far as I'm concerned. And you know, you can see it already. You know, there's you know, you look at like the M&A space, and you can see there's been a lot of activity that kind of supports what I'm doing, but what I'm saying, sorry. But I think in the end, it's not that difficult. You know, my son is 10, and he is making films, and he's got loads of followers.
Yeah, the barrier to entry for creators has come right down because of iPhones, because of the technology, and there is a democratization in that, isn't there? Which is great, because it's actually a mobility thing, it's an access thing as well, which I know is something, you know, you've always been very passionate about, encouraging diversity and inclusion in talent generally. But I think also it is going to be, you know, I'd like your point of view on this. The ingenuity is going to become as much about the messaging and the attention grabbing, because it's not about just showing up on the platform anymore. Because as you say, you're watching multiple platforms. I mean, the over 50s, which I'm rapidly approaching myself, are now the biggest, you know, slide away from linear TV viewing onto on demand and fast channels and AVOD channels and things. So that there's a proliferation of ways in which you can connect with people. But you better have something interesting to say. And I wonder if you think that there might be something quite different in the next few years in the way that we kind of reverse, like we shift that right brain, left brain. We sort of almost like felt that creative was a dirty word for the last 10 years because everyone got so excited about data. That's just personal opinion. I don't know if you see that actually the way in which you structure your teams going forward will be different, because you must have seen so many different shapes of teams over the year to service different things.
Yeah, and it's a really good point. And what I also know about the creative economy is how data driven it is.
Yeah.
So it's much more into making stuff, understanding how it goes, backing it further, doing more, a bit like it. It's much more into learning, and it's iterating the work so that it performs better. Performs as in reaches more people, you know, whatever the metrics are. And I think that the data and creativity are kind of the same thing. But I also think, and you made a very good point about, you know, it's not like we're short of content, are we? You know, I mean, the world is literally dripping in it, and this is why agencies matter more. And it's because clients will need to know how to navigate that world, so that they're not just sort of adding more stuff into it. It's stuff that matters, you know, stuff that materially affects how people think or act, and that will mean more on quality, more on originality. Probably it might mean they make less content, not more, as it goes, but it's just about how you make it, where it appears, how you evaluate its performance. So it is an exciting new frontier, I would say, and I'm not sure anyone's cracking it at the moment. So it's still all to play for, and that's why I think you know, there are loads of reasons to be cheerful, if we are prepared to run fast at it and be open-minded, because it will require us letting go from some of the kind of more traditional ways of looking at the work we do.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because traditional structures of having a depth in one of the mediums that's available as a service provider of any description has had to evolve so rapidly in the last sort of 10 years or so. But actually, what I want to just go back to something that you said about collaboration externally and kind of breaking down some of those silos. It feels like if you are truly going to be able to serve, you know, audiences with engaging content, regardless of where they happen to be going for that content, you need to be open as a leadership team, presumably, to be collaborating with people who are particularly good in TikTok, are particularly good in music, where you've got, you don't have to be the ones, the kind of, like, we stop here, it's got to be within these walls. I don't know if that has been sort of changing post-pandemic, are people opening up to those external collaborations with creators, with musicians, whatever. Is that something that we can look forward to seeing more
of? There's no doubt that move is going to continue, but it will become less and less a sort of tactical thing that brands just do to do something cool on the internet. It'll be more strategic and more fundamental. It might mean that there's less of them, but they're more thought through. You think about in the more traditional era, you think about some of the best TV spots you've ever seen, and they will feature somebody famous. They'll feature a collaboration in essence. It's the same sort of discipline, but it may well be that the person's fame is derived from their following, not because they're a footballer or a music star or whatever. So it's the same set of disciplines, I think, but it's just repurposed and repackaged for a sort of a new era. And I think the other thing I would say about that is before there would be some kind of like law and order about the funnel. So you would know what brand building was, or what sorts of channels usually you would be using to
which
do it.
order they're going to see it in, presumably, as well.
And you would be in some sort of control around the order of events, leading to some kind of commercial act from the target audience.
That's a good point.
It's not like that now. It's like snakes and ladders.
That's such a good analogy. You're so right.
And you can move from sort of no awareness whatsoever to knowing a lot and having some sort of affinity to buying something in one train journey now, because of the way mobile commerce works. And again, it's just really exciting, but it just requires an open-minded attitude and also a sense of where we probably need to iterate how we do our work and how we think about where our work's appearing and how people in the real world are interacting with it.
Which presumably, because you're right, they're kind of, the data but data and actually certainly in my TV world, in which I often operate in post-production, sort of the barriers are reducing as to kind of edits you can make. It's like less challenging to change things than it was back when you had to do storyboards and then make the ad and that's it, and nobody can change anything. So presumably that kind of requires an active listening of the audience, that perhaps it was sort of too late to do anything about it in the olden days when we stick something out there and sort of hope for the best and just monitor the sales. And that, I wonder if that sort of iterative nature of marketing now and engagement generally changes the kind of leaders you look for when you're looking for talent. Obviously, that's something that we think about quite, given that we hire people for chief execs, C-suites, boards. I think there's certainly a cultural shift in the openness and the encouragement and the sort of vulnerability of a leader today, that they are able to and are encouraged to show that perhaps they wouldn't have been 10 years ago. But what else do you look for, when you're bringing in senior talent? Has that changed over the last few years?
That's such a great question. Because it's I would go back to what I said earlier on, really. Nobody's cracked it. And if you think about the sort of generational continuum of senior leaders, younger leaders, whilst they have grown up in this era and are more comfortable with some of the things you're talking about, particularly changing stuff, moving at the speed of culture, let's say, that they generally don't know how businesses work. or how big companies make decisions, or how big companies benefit from using these sorts of techniques. They also tend not to be very strategic. You know, they don't have a sense of bigger picture or where these things are going. So that they're exciting, but they're also somewhat chaotic and often not professional.
Yeah.
Whereas people who are perhaps at the older end of this continuum, they're not comfortable necessarily with the sort of change and the sort of, let's say, novelty of some of these skills, but they are very good at strategic advice and influencing clients and all those sorts of things. So I think it's about trying to find the right blend, and I don't know that you're going to find it necessarily in our person. It's about how teams work within companies, and how you can get the sort of best out of all of these perspectives. So I think it'll be less and less about, you know, our clear leader. It's more about clear leadership, but it's about recognizing it's a process, and it's about a dialogue and a collaboration in order to get the best out of all of these things.
That's really interesting. Ian, thank you. I can't believe we're out of time already. I could listen to you chatting about this all day, but thank you very much. Thank you for joining us on our One Question series, and let's see in 6 months if, you know, we're still hopefully even more cheerful than we might be after this.
Yeah, thank you.